Good afternoon. Good afternoon. There's an echo. Good afternoon. Oh, okay. Good afternoon. My name is Councillor Nunziata, and I'm the chair of the Budget Subcommittee. The clerk has confirmed that we do have quorum, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today's meeting is being held on and in person at the North York Centre in the council chambers. Members of the public who are registered to speak today are participating by video conference on WebEx and are also in the room today. Welcome to everyone. Today's meeting is streaming live on YouTube, and you can find the list of speakers. Council. I ask everyone for their patience if we experience any delays or technical problems with the video conference or web stream. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and Wendat people, and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand and unmute your mic. Seeing none, we will proceed. This is a meeting of a subcommittee of Budget Committee. Councillor Vincent Crisanti and Councillor Michael Thompson and myself are members of one of the two subcommittees of the Budget Committee that have been established to hear public presentations today. Our colleagues on Budget Committee, Councillor Gary Crawford, Councillor Bravo, and Councillor Moyes are at City Hall today to also hear presentations on the budget. Today at the North York Civic Center, we have two sessions scheduled, the first starting now at 1:30 and again at 6 p.m. tonight. The city clerk has posted the speakers list online at toronto.ca council. Click on the speakers button for today's meeting to see the complete list of names. We have approximately 8 speakers registered for this session at 1:30 p.m. and 8 speakers registered for this session at 6 p.m. this evening. For the public who are speaking today, here is how our speaker process works. We have speakers in person in the room and some online. If you're online, the video conference host will activate your microphone and you can turn on your video if you'd like. I would call each name on the list in order, and then you will have 5 minutes to speak to the Budget Committee. After that, please stay on the line because members of the committee may want to ask you questions. After your speaking time, you can stay connected and listen and follow the rest of the meeting on YouTube. The clerk has also received emails and communications from the public about the 2023 budget. Those communications are being made available at members on the CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. I encourage the public to send their comments to the Budget Committee throughout the budget process by emailing buc@toronto.ca. This is the public's opportunity to speak about the budget. This is also our opportunity to consider their comments before we make our recommendations. Budget Committee will meet again on January 24th for our wrap-up meeting and make our recommendations to the Mayor and to City Council. Let's start with the first speaker. Our first speaker is Diane Sepekishi, and she's on video conference. Diane, you have 5 minutes. Diane? Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Diane?
Hi there.
Hi, Diane. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the chair of the meeting today and the committee for their time and attention. My name is Diane Sepakishi. I was born and raised in Toronto and am a resident of Councillor Jay Robinson's ward, which is Ward 15, Don Valley West, and I live right on the border between Ward 15 and Ward 12, Toronto St. Paul's. I am here today to address concerns over the budget and allocation of funds. Of particular concern is the increase to the police budget that will see the hiring of 200 more police officers, while other items on the budget remain drastically underfunded. There is conflicting evidence as to the effectiveness of more officers on the street and its effect on public safety. Sometimes crime rates go up after additional police officers have been hired, sometimes they go down. Sometimes crime rates have everything to do with weather and nothing to do with police hiring. Meanwhile, vulnerable persons in our city remain unsupported. Let me give you a recent example from our ward. Last week, a person experiencing homelessness was walking along a neighborhood street, knocking on residents' doors, attempting to open the doors, and yelling somewhat incoherently. Residents were concerned that someone who they didn't know was trying to enter their homes, obviously, and their children were scared just from the yelling and the noise. Without much other option, residents called the police to report this individual, but since this individual was not hurting anyone, the police said there was nothing they could do. Residents were left without options, and this individual was left to continue to roam the street and were unsure where they would have gone to sleep for the night. The majority of us are not trained in how to properly handle this type of situation, and if it isn't the responsibility of police officers, who in our city is responsible for supporting these individuals, and why aren't there more of them that we know how to contact and can get in touch with? Did this person have a space at a shelter and couldn't find their way back? Did they even have a space for the evening? Or were they one of many who don't have a space? We're hitting seasonal temperatures that regularly dip into dangerous wind chills now. Had this person been wandering aimlessly around at -20 degrees Celsius, who would these residents have called to find them a safe place to go for the evening? And where would this safe place be? This is just one incident, one event from our neighborhood, but it illustrates the gaps we have in supporting our most vulnerable citizens. These citizens deserve our respect and care, and the residents of the ward who were concerned, but who weren't in direct harm, what support person could they call? What support staff does the city have? Our neighborhood has shown great support to the shelter that opened on Mount Pleasant Road north of Eglinton. We pulled together to donate items when residents were first moving in, and each Halloween many residents donate leftover candy to the shelter. So we are concerned. We do want to see these vulnerable citizens supported, but how can we see to that if our city budget does not allocate funds for shelter spaces and for staff? I sincerely hope you will reconsider how city funds are being allocated in this year's budget and consider how we can ensure support for everyone in our city, including our most vulnerable. That's all the time that I would like to take up for now. I would like to just thank you for the time and attention that you've given today.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, through you to the Speaker. Thank you very much for your presentation today. I just made a note, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard you say that the city does not allocate funds for shelter. Is that what you said?
We do allocate funds for shelters, but my concern is
but I'm just asking you what I heard you. What I heard you said that we didn't. Are you now saying that we don't allocate enough? Is that what you're now saying?
Yes.
Okay. So in this year's budget, if my memory, sorry, go ahead. My apologies.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry if I misspoke and that was unclear.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that this year's budget, I think the number is about $317 million that's being allocated for shelter services and so on. In the last 2 years, it's been you combine the total, it's almost $1.3 billion. How much more should we be investing in a problem that continues to grow? We all agree that it's very complex, and I just want you to be assured that I'm not being callous with respect to my questions. It's just that we're in a difficult situation, limited resources, lots of demands, including policing and so on, because in my ward, I get the demand and the calls for more policing in the community. So I'm just wondering, from your particular perspective, how much more should we allocate then as part of the shelter support and services, or 24/7 warming facilities and so on? And then what portion of the increase of police should we then apply to that number that you are now saying is not enough?
I must apologize. I wanted to come here and share my opinion and my thoughts of how the money was being allocated. I don't have specific numbers to provide as, you know, a citizen who is coming to one of my first meetings and presenting data.
Sure.
So I can't provide specific numbers. I know there are budget crunches. I know COVID has had significant impacts. And I just wanted to state my opinion and make it clear that proper thought was being considered when allocating all of the monies that we do have available for all of the different services.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I just wonder if I can just explore that a little further, because previous role last term, the shelter support and services came under my committee chairship, if you will. And we know the work that was done with staff, with the concerns that we have, opening more facilities. And so we've opened, for example, utilizing more hotels to accommodate those in need. We've spent an additional $50 million just to deal with renovation, replacement, dealing with the damage to rooms and facilities and so on. I just wanted to ask whether or not you were aware of those types of details associated with this very important, complex issue. And I appreciate what you said earlier, but I just wanted to know if you had that information. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Our next deputant is Judith Lawrence. Okay, Judith, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Judith Lawrence, and I live in Willowdale. And I wanted to say that this is my first deputation, so I'm a little nervous. And I'm very happy that you offered this space and time, and thank you. Since losing much of my eyesight, I moved from Mississauga to Toronto for the transit on the subway and now on Wheel-Trans. And the public transit has been so important to me. Otherwise, I would be homebound. Luckily, I don't have to worry about the service cuts to the bus routes because I am a senior. I live in this area and they don't have them. And because of the increase in fares, I don't have to worry about that either. But I am concerned. I am concerned that these service cuts and increased fares will affect the riders in Toronto on the TTC. As an advocate for the city's climate action plan, the Transform TO, I applaud and I really appreciate the ambitious and plan that is happening, hopefully to get to net zero by 2040. And we need to reduce the emissions in transportation. And that is one way by providing better public transit and also to have fewer cars on the road. What can we do to fund all this climate emergency initiative? Well, one thing could be, an idea is to look at parking levies on commercial lots downtown. I know this has worked in other places, and I'm sure it's something to consider. But of course, all that is small change. when we look at what the needs are, the billions of dollars that we need to spend in order to cover the costs to mitigate climate change. $8 billion has been estimated by the city on a yearly basis if we actually could get this done. And you have, I think, on the books about 2 billion, possibly less. Do we really need to rebuild the Gardiner with billions of dollars when we're talking about trying to upgrade transit and have fewer cars on the road? Garage space and electric buses are part of the costs that we need to work on. And there are many asks, and I realize that it is a daunting task for councillors to make these decisions with the mayor. Please consider Transform TO as you make your decisions on the budget for this year. After all, 2040 is only 17 years away. I will not be here then, but my children and grandchildren will be. And I'm hoping that your decisions today will make it a more livable city in the near future. When we are in an emergency, a climate emergency, we have to make our actions as strong as our words. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, Councillor Crisanti.
Judith, I just want to say thank you. Excellent presentation. And I want to thank you for your confidence in moving to our city, your confidence in our transit system. And that's one reason I believe you indicated in your speaking points that you moved over back to Toronto. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And also, I'm glad that you recognize that, as the seniors advocate for the city of Toronto, and Mayor Tory took the lead as in ensuring that we don't increase seniors' fares. So that's an important part of the budget that I also believe you recognized in your points. Is that correct?
We are not increasing seniors' fares. It is only the regular fare that's being increased right now.
Yeah.
Supposedly, unless you change it.
Anyway, Judith, thank you. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Cheng, 5 minutes.
Hi, Judith. That's okay. I also want to just echo what Councillor Crisanti said, that I know it can be a little bit nerve-wracking to go through this formal process, but I hear your heart and your passion, not just for transit, but also for the environment and the climate crisis. So, and I think, the city is creatively, I think the idea of a parking levy, I know some people have floated the idea of sales tax. Clearly, there is a revenue gap. And I think we're unique in the city of Toronto in that we are very reliant on the fare box to fund our operations. And so I'm just wondering, between adding a sales tax and parking levies, some municipalities have actually leaned on surrounding municipalities to contribute towards their major transit system in major cities. Do you have what you think would be your preferred way of how we would fund transit?
The more money, the better. And I don't know about that. I look at Mississauga and it's got its own struggles. And you're right, people do come into the city from Mississauga. And I remember getting on the bus for, quote, free because of the CNIB in Mississauga, but then I had to pay when I came to Toronto. And I thought, am I not blind enough? But it was because I was in a city that, you know, you had to live in it in order to get the transit paid as such. So, yeah, there are questions, surely. And each city around the GTA, et cetera, will have its own struggles as well. But we're the important city in the sense of economics and work, et cetera. So no particular levy, but let's look at money put there.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Judith? Yeah, I just have one question. In your presentation, you mentioned a commercial, a levy for parking lots, downtown parking lots. So are you asking just for downtown or all of the city?
I know it's very complicated. And I know that if I had a business in a strip plaza and I was paying rent, et cetera, for my place, I know it would, and to put an extra levy on cars parking, it would cause a lot more difficulty. And, you know, so I'm not sure how that would work.
Right.
And that's why I looked at downtown, because that's where you can get to by public transit.
Yeah.
It's, you know.
So you do understand that if you start charging the levy, that it would affect a lot of these small businesses in, that have businesses in strip plazas or even doctor's offices, churches, because once you implement the levy, it applies to all parking lots.
But of course, so does climate change.
Well, thank you. Our next deputant is Caleb Downs.
Hello?
Conference. Caleb?
Hello.
Yes, hi. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to try and turn my video on. Do that. Hello, members of City Council. Good. I acknowledge we're settlers here on the traditional territories of many Indigenous people and nations, and in the spirit of reconciliation, I'm here to speak for my family, community, those who do not have a voice here at this committee today, and those who have lost their lives due to lack of public safety. We all have a duty to build a better shared collective future for our city. I'm here to speak today about how important access to public transportation and the TTC is to our community. Public transportation is a crucial aspect of mobility and economic opportunity. All residents of our city should have unobstructed access to the resources they need, whether it be for work, education, healthcare, or leisure. I've witnessed firsthand waiting for overcrowded buses to arrive and the promise of future transit projects to be completed. Streetcar service on the lakeshore has been stopped completely, and the construction from the Eglinton Crosstown and Finch LRT makes our communities dirtier and less safe while we hold out for what could be decades of waiting. All while walkways and sidewalks become even more unwalkable, and that's for someone who's able-bodied. I urge City Council to please vote to amend this budget. It does not serve the majority of Toronto's residents' needs and is not a supportive post-COVID recovery budget that our city needs. It does not aim to achieve any progress in our efforts to combat climate change, encourages bad habits of the past while squandering opportunities for a better and greener future. What will our next centennial look like? Let us lead the world as a city of the future. I strongly urge the council to take immediate action to rebuild ridership and improve access to the TTC for all residents by firstly, increasing efficient, reliable service and lowering fares to public transit to be more affordable and accessible for all, not cutting funding and services while raising fares. Access to public transportation has been linked to positive health outcomes, such as reducing air pollution, increasing physical activity, and reducing traffic congestion. It also has positive effects on mental health and overall well-being. by reducing social isolation and increasing access to services and resources. This is even more precedent after the COVID-19 pandemic. I urge that we stop service cuts and fare increases which disproportionately affect low-income residents and communities of color. This is the ridership that depends on TTC service. The TTC is a vital resource for those unable to drive, such as the elderly, disabled, non-citizens, low-income residents, and even visitors to our city. Gas is at an all-time high and driving is becoming less and less feasible. Without reliable and affordable public transportation, more individuals may be unable to access the required services and opportunities, leading to increased poverty and social inequality. One of the ways we can make these changes a reality is to fully fund the low-income fare pass discount program to ensure that all residents can afford to access the TTC. One of the most significant benefits of TTC is the ability to reduce traffic congestions on our roads and highways. By providing an efficient and reliable alternative to driving, public transportation can help to reduce the number of cars on the road, resulting in less traffic, less pollution, and a safer environment for our city. This would ensure that we are expanding safe, accessible, and dignified service as opposed to investing in policing and surveillance measures that do not address the root causes of ridership decline. In addition to its benefit for traffic, public transit in the TTC also plays a critical role in our fight against climate change. With a substantial component slated in this budget for the Gardiner rehabilitation, I would like to see a more progressive plan to at least incorporate parallel transit service along the Gardiner that better connects our communities and safe, active transportation options on safe city streets. Public transportation generates far lower greenhouse gas emissions per passenger mile than personal vehicles, and it is a key strategy for reducing our overall carbon footprint. Given the urgent need to reduce traffic and combat climate change and meet our targets for 2040, investing in the upkeep and expansion of public transportation is not only a smart choice for our community, it is essential. By expanding and improving TTC by increasing further funding, we can create a more sustainable, livable, and equitable city for all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Chen.
Hi, Kayla. Thank you so much for deputing today. I just have a question about, you mentioned that we should be working to restore ridership. And I think one of my questions about the future and concerns is that we are increasingly moving towards a hybrid kind of world. And so what happens to ridership in a permanent way that, you know, should our goal be to return back to 2019 numbers, or do you think that there will be a new normal that will have to impact our decision making?
I think we need to return to 2019 service and prepare for more people to be using the transit. We're like one of the biggest centers in Canada. We're expanding. I've seen more cars on the road than ever before. So if we can expand transit service, we can provide better service for ridership, increase the ridership, and reduce traffic and congestion and make safer cities.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, questions?
Thank you very much, Speaker, through you. Good afternoon, Caleb, and thank you so much for being here. I've listened to your deputation and so on, and I wanted to ask you, do you have some thoughts and ideas in terms of how we can generate the appropriate revenues to create more investment to the TTC, as you've expressed a desire for better service, increased service, no increase in fares and so on? I'm just wondering if you had some ideas in terms of how we can address that through generating revenues to invest, as also in terms of expanding the the system along. For example, I think you said the Gardiner. I'm just looking at my notes here, but nonetheless, you were talking about expanding the service along to create a parallel system.
Absolutely. So in terms of revenue, I think if we had lower fares, we would see more ridership, because nobody wants to see fares go up. We want to use the services that are there. But I'm in Humber River, Black Creek, and the bus service is inadequate for me to get to where I need to in a timely manner. So typically I end up driving. There's been ad space that I've seen like the province of Alberta has been buying ad space within the TTC, drawing residents away from Toronto, and that's not good for our city. Yeah, sure, there's some revenue there, but like ridership ultimately will increase revenue, but we can't do so by raising the fares because that will decrease ridership. I'm sure that there's partnerships with the province and the federal government. There was an announcement for investment at Bloor Station to improve that. I'm sure that partnerships can be found. Like I said in my thoughts, paralleling service on the Gardiner, there's a lot of money being invested in that rehabilitation program. It'd be great to see high-speed buses being offered there to commute out to Mississauga, to Hamilton, etc. Working
thank you
with
very much.
municipal partners.
No problem. I think I interrupted you. I thought you were finished, but please continue.
No, yeah, I just find there's ways to increase revenue and service without raising fares, because I find that will decrease ridership because people are more likely to take their car because of inefficient service. We have to get to places on a certain time, and if there's a full bus or no bus at all, how do we get there? Is there, there's outages on the TTC, there's shuttle buses. We have to work to improve the system. And
Fair,
thank you.
fair enough. Thank you so much. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Our next deputant is Andrea Baker. Andrea?
Sec. Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Andrea, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, thank you for hearing me speak. I'm here to speak on the TTC and policing budgets. Since we are trying to increase safety and decrease climate change, the TTC budget needs to be increased rather than decreased. The already approved Transform Toronto strategy to make Toronto a net zero city explicitly recommends free transit fares. So increasing fares would be a step towards climate disaster. In general, working towards walkability and public transit rather than a car-centered city will make Toronto's spaces safer, quieter, more enjoyable, and sustainable, and a more friendly community-based environment. Councillors, please ask the city staff to report on how Toronto could implement a commercial parking levy for big malls and commercial landlords, which could unlock up to $575 million per year. This is something that has already been agreed upon, I believe last year, a couple years ago, and is a brilliant solution to finding the funds for the TTC budget. Infrastructure that is sprawling, dispersed by parking and long highways, low-density housing is also extremely expensive for cities. I can provide sources for this later if people want. It's mostly strong cities. Not to mention, for individuals, cars are extremely expensive, and reducing the dependency on cars in the city will help with the cost of living concerns, that is. Investing in public transit and making mobility accessible and affordable for everyone in Toronto would make me proud. Funds for the TTC could also be pulled from the policing budget. Since the brutality of policing towards racial and other minorities gained attention in 2020, I don't think the City of Toronto could genuinely pride itself on multiculturalism and progressive politics while also increasing the policing budget. Residents of Toronto need affordable, low-emission mobility, not free car infrastructure, and increased policing. Thank you so much for hearing me speak, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Felix Tripp. Okay, Felix, you have 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Good day. My name is Felix Tripp, and I live in Willowdale, Ward 18. I do a lot of mutual aid work in different wards across the city. I'm here today because I have concerns about the budget and the effects it will have on me and my communities. I was born in Toronto and have always lived under the poverty line. Growing up in the city, I did not have access to the same opportunities as a lot of my peers. Sorry. I have always had to take at least 2 buses to access resources and opportunities, and that continues into today. I am exhausted. These days, I spend an average of 4 hours in transit per day. It has become difficult and unsafe for me to rely on the TTC as a disabled person. Sorry. This impacts my ability to secure a stable job. Will any of the TTC funding go towards more seating for those with disabilities when wait times are increased and services reduced? Or will people with disabilities like myself have to opt out of participating in society because of inadequate support, trapping us in a cycle of poverty? I have concerns about overfunding the police, especially when social programming and public spaces have been underfunded for years. The police do not have a good record of working with transgender, Black, Indigenous, or disabled communities. I do not believe that they should be given the $48.3 million they have requested. The people who continue to show up for me are caseworkers, therapists, and community members. I stand before you today only because of the social programming, which has helped me to find community, access to healthcare, and find and secure housing. Through programs including youth drop-in spaces, food banks, and youth counseling services, I've not only been able to survive, but I've also been able to take part in yoga classes, camping trips outside of the city, and art workshops led by members of the community. Sorry. These services have been underfunded for years, and despite that, they've made a huge impact in my quality of life. Another issue is the lack of support for people who age out of support systems. There need to be more programs for marginalized adults who need support, who are outside of the youth and senior categories, those who cannot afford private recreational classes that are proven to support wellness and social connection. I would also like this budget to consider creating steady, stable careers for individuals like myself, who have a lot of lived experience but face barriers to employment, such as lack of high school education or not having a car. Short-term programs are helpful and a move in the right direction, but I can tell you that they're not enough. And there is not the same effort to accommodate coming from the majority of employers who often complain about labor shortages. When considering policies around supporting individuals with disabilities, a one-size-fits-all approach does not work. I do not want to live in supported housing. I want to live with full autonomy and privacy. Do not tell me or other disabled people what we need. Please listen to us and the expertise we have on our own bodies and our own lives. I want to see you take an active role in addressing prejudice because I see and experience it every time I leave the house. Furthermore, I do not want to live in a city where I cannot go for a walk into certain neighborhoods that might have more green space than the one that I'm currently living in, only to be reported for prowling. I do not want to fund fare evasion officers, loss prevention positions, or any other positions that criminalize the poor. I do not want to live in a city where I'm under constant surveillance with the excuse of keeping people safe. I'm a person too, and these actions do not make me feel safe. I didn't grow up aspiring to live in poverty. What are counselors doing to advocate for disabled Torontonians? What is being done to ensure that we can live in dignity and have our needs met? I invite other Torontonians to appear before council and make your voices heard. Thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing actions in the aforementioned areas.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Felix. Thank you very much for your presentation today. I didn't hear, you're working, and where are you working? What type of work do you do?
Sorry, I volunteer for different organizations. Like I do the community stewardship program where we remove invasive species from different ravines and parks in the city.
But that's just volunteering, right? So
Yes.
that's what and are you aware of some of our programs that we have at the city that could be of some utility to you?
Yes, I'm aware of all of them. Well, probably not all of them, but a lot of them.
Sure. And how are you finding them in terms of your awareness? Are you able to reach out to seek some assistance? And have you had some positive feedback?
it's been a process. It's very hard for me to do things online because I'd really rather talk to people face to face.
Okay.
It's a lot of information to process.
Your counselor is here, by the way. I'm sure you could meet with
Yeah.
her in her office. I'm sure she'd be more than delighted. I'm volunteering her. I know that she's that good. So I was just curious about that aspect because in my office, for example, if people are not able to get online to register, for example, the VHT that we've introducing, we are able to bring people in and we are able to help them. So I'm just wondering if that could be of some utilization to you through the programs that we have incorporated in this particular budget to assist individual Torontonians who have some disability issues that we want to help them to improve their quality of life. And that's really what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, I've personally found that navigating, asking for accommodations is difficult. And I actually did in one job process apply for request accessibility accommodation in the hiring process just so that someone would see my application.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time it's automated.
Yeah.
And I'm still working through that application, but yeah, it's just been hard.
Well, just, I know I have a couple more minutes and it's not a question, but just as a point, look, I think we're all here to help and we want to help. You seem to be a remarkable person. And I'm very delighted to obviously just experience you just now, but your communication skills are just amazing. And I think that there has to be initiatives and programs that we have in the city that would be able to assist you to allow you to have the full ability to utilize your skill sets and to experience this amazing city as you wish. And I know you talk about growing up poor. While that's not a situation in which one wants to find themselves into, but there's an opportunity for you to be helped. And I think there are measures in our budget to help you. And I think we'd like to explore that with your local councillor. And may I just say, thank you so much for your presentation. You were fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're not finished. We still need you.
Okay, Councillor Cheng, question.
Through the chair, Felix, I am deeply moved by your words, and also I too would use the word remarkable to describe what I just heard. For someone who has faced tremendous hurdles, you show yourself to be someone who has taken a lot of initiative to fight, to find a space for yourself, and even the initiative and courage that it takes to make a deputation, I think is worth acknowledging. And so I think it is important to hear the voices of people with lived experience through the lens of making budget decisions. And as the year continues into designing the very programs that we run that are meant specifically to help people like you find a landing spot that clearly you have a lot to offer. And I also wanted to thank you for your mutual aid work, because I know during the pandemic, mutual aid was a really fun foundational piece of getting community members to support fellow community members. And again, that took initiative for you to plug into those systems and to contribute in that way. So as your counselor, I'm offering my support, and my team is actually here. If you turn around, Wincing will wave at you, and she will make an appointment for us to meet and we can chat further. But I do want to hear about one piece. What is the gap that you are experiencing with regard to programs? Because, it sounds like you have researched and experienced a lot of programs. What is the gap that would really, if we were able to bridge that gap, that would really, launch you into being able to do and fulfill your potential?
I'm not very sure. I kind of live day by day, so it's hard I kind of gave up on everything. Like I try to do these things, but it's not easy for me to allow myself to think of like what could be. So I kind of don't. So I don't have a prepared answer. I just am continuing.
That's
to do-
okay. No pressure. You can think about it, and we'll meet sometime, perhaps in the coming week, and we can brainstorm together and hear what your thoughts are, because your voice and experience is very important to us. So thank you so much for coming today, Felix.
Okay, thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Our next deputant is Jeff Cattell.
Good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Okay,
Am I being heard?
Jeff, you have 5 minutes. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Cattell. I'm co-chair with Catherine McDonald of the Federation of North Toronto Resident Associations. We are a federation with over 30 members who are resident associations in North Toronto and North York. And frankly, it's a privilege to be here today to listen to some of the moving and very thoughtful presentations that have been made prior to me, and hopefully I can try and match some of them. Very good. First of all, the 2023 Toronto budget process, now called the Mayor's Budget, is compressed in time and diminished in opportunities for public input and engagement compared with previous years. This may reduce resident interest and reduce councillors' appreciation of residents' priorities for the city's finances, which frankly is unfortunate. Secondly, the proposed mayor's budget, while being branded as, quote, balanced, is in fact highly dependent on risky assumptions of federal and provincial funding support, both COVID-related and those resulting from provincial legislative changes, such as the development charges reduction, that's a $240 million annual loss, and community benefits change, the elimination of Section 37 under the Planning Act. In addition, the city is failing once again to address its serious long-term structural deficit. The budget framework is fundamentally broken, with an over-reliance on transfers from other levels of government and on property taxes. This is actually not a criticism of the city, it's a criticism of the province more than the city. But the city urgently needs to examine and implement new revenue tools, including a municipal sales tax, which is widely applied in US cities, and a commercial parking levy, proceeds of which would be applied to transit investment. Increasing backlog in state of good repair over a wide range of operations, roads, parks, forestry, etc., is a major concern. A city that becomes shabby, if you like, is on a path to decline. Look south to the Rust Belt. The city needs to rethink its capital priorities, increase capital funding to shift people out of cars by increasing, not reducing, transit frequency, and safer streets for cyclists and pedestrians. Abandon the Gardiner rebuild and shift the $2 billion funds to address the state of good repair backlog. The proposed 10-cent increase in transit fares and 9% reduction in transit frequency will discourage passenger usage, will disproportionately impact those with low incomes, and is contrary to the city's climate goals. Current level of funding for Transform TO initiatives will not allow Toronto to reach its climate target of net zero by 2040. The city needs accessible and affordable transit, active transportation initiatives to decrease emissions and increase protection of the urban forest. Unless the above measures are taken to ameliorate the structural deficit, this year's level of property tax increase, which may be marginally acceptable on a one-time basis, will become annual, which is not acceptable to Toronto residents or viable for the long term. The $48 million increase in police funding should be rethought, with funding shared with non-police social service alternatives, such as community crisis response, multidisciplinary teams. We suggest that the city not be shy to make the structural changes suggested above and to hold the province to account for the losses being experienced by the city as a result of these uncalled for provincial legislative changes. Finally, we acknowledge that the city has many needs, both immediate and to safeguard the future for our children and our grandchildren. It's important to manage the city's budget wisely, as it clearly did with COVID, making Toronto one of the world's leading jurisdictions in COVID-19 prevention over the past 3 years. And frankly, with thanks and recognition to Toronto Public Health for developing and using innovative delivery methods for vaccinations. And I can say that as a former chair of the East York Board. Thank you.
You have 10 seconds.
Done.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Thompson, question.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mrs. Kettle, and good to see you, sir. And thank you. Your organization have been one of the leading groups on leading many changes at the city in terms of planning, as well as your voice on many other issues. I wanted to ask you specifically with the police budget itself. You mentioned the $48 million that's been applied for this year's 2023 budget. Are you aware that approximately $24 million of that budget is actually for contractual and legislative aspect in terms of the agreement itself to provide the increase for the contracts with the police?
No, not in detail. I had heard recently that the $48 million wasn't in fact, fully an increase, that it was actually to maintain the same levels, that you had to come back to the, I have heard Mr. Stephen Conforti speaking on Councillor Cheng's program on Sunday night, and actually that was explained a little bit there. So yes,
Okay.
It may not be quite what it appears.
Right. And are you aware that with respect to the balance of the funding, which is, let's say, half of that, that is actually for 336 staff for police, 200 of which are police officers. The extra 136 are for other non-police staff. I'm just wondering if you're aware of that.
Not in detail, no. But that's what we're really saying is that the policing, old-fashioned policing, has to be rethought and involve a wider range of disciplines: the mental health workers, the supportive workers, and the shelter workers, and so on. It all needs to be a team approach. The uniform is not the thing. It's understanding the need and doing it. And so that's good to hear if those changes are being made.
I appreciate that, sir. But are you also aware that with respect to issues around mental health and the work that both the police and the agencies and the programs that the mayor has advocated and supported with respect to non-policing agencies and non-government agencies to deal with the pilot programs that are in Scarborough and elsewhere in the city to look at an overall expansion? Are you aware that investment is being made in that area, along with respect to the work that the police is doing in mental health?
Again, not in detail. I think that the mayor made a pre-January the 10th announcement, and it was branded as a police announcement. So I think maybe the problem was in the messaging initially.
The clarity. Okay.
The clarity. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Cheng, questions?
Hello, through the chair. Thank you so much for your feedback. And I have heard wonderful things about your organization and look forward to working with you in the future. I also wanted to ask if you were aware that there are actually 3 initiatives that are trying to diversify our responses to the community. So they include a crisis response team, a Toronto Community Crisis Service, as well as a mobile crisis intervention team. So we are aware that we want alternative responses, and the Toronto Community Crisis Service is something that is still being piloted. So there is a goal to expand it, but because it's so important, we really want to make sure that it is done well. So as a result, I just wanted to know, like, if you knew that that it is in development and the goal is to expand its capacity, but we're in process.
Well, absolutely. I do recall seeing just yesterday a news release from the city announcing the pilot, the results of the pilot, and I haven't looked beyond that. But yes, that's good news.
Mm-hmm. And also that there is a intention to increase. And the word, I'm new to the police board, and a word that I've learned that I think is wonderful that they too are embracing this is civilianization. So the police are actively civilianizing tasks so that increasingly police can focus on policing. And currently there is a lag of 20 minutes. That's the response time for a level 1, your life is in danger 911 call. And I think that is something that, so I'm wondering, you know, for the constituents that you represent, is that of concern to them, the response time for level 1 emergencies?
Well, yes, people are concerned about that, and hopefully with these changes, we can get the police diverted into doing the priority stuff, and other professionals can be involved in some of the other stuff, and also using technology, for example, for the traffic work and that kind of thing.
So
I used to be on the
yes.
police liaison committee, but it's been 10 years since I was involved with that myself.
Right. So I think that these are important issues. The allocation of funding, working on the police board to ensure that these dollars are well spent, but there is a gap in the number of active police and the growth of our population. And so just that emergency response time is a red flag for our community. And I think that is one of the reasons that increasing funding to ensure the safety of our community is something that would result in support for increasing the budget. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't.
Councillor Chen.
Oh, sorry. Question. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you think there is a balance that needs to be strike between investing in the safety response that is important, as well as in the social services that are key to increasing overall long-term safety in the community? So we have the immediate safety concerns and the long-term preventing, I guess, people who have challenges, who are living in poverty. Is there a balance when you look at the limited limited size of pie that we have?
Well, this is exactly what we're saying is what we want. And what you're saying is that there's, in fact, this is what is happening, and that's good news. What I think is that there's an enormous gap between, you know, news releases and statements by the mayor and what people actually on the ground understand. And there needs to be somehow a way of, you know, communicating, you know, with residents and through and involving, for example, resident associations in this area, so that there is better understanding and therefore ultimately better support. Right now, there's not a great level of support for the police, and we need to ensure that would get better. You know, maybe we can talk in future about that.
Thank you.
Our next deputant is Valerie Endicott.
Good afternoon.
Okay, Valerie, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I'm a Climate Fast member, and Climate Fast is a climate activist group in Toronto here that's been very very effective in helping with the Transform TO efforts. I'm hopeful that this council, infused with some marvelous new energy, as well as those of you with experience, will come together and lead us to do our very best in a time of a multitude of crises. Toronto, as Canada's largest city, must be exemplary. I know you know that. What we do here really, really matters. Toronto's net zero by 2040 strategy is wonderfully aspirational, but it needs to become a reality, and it must be prioritized in the budget. If we did this, it would simultaneously help other crises, such as the public transportation funding, affordable housing, and frankly, even the mental health crisis. People need to feel good about the future by being cared for now. So take, for example, the TDC funding, about which we've heard a lot already today. As you know, the budget calls for a 10% increase in fares and an overall 9% decrease in service. And this runs completely counter to the net zero strategy, which calls for strengthening our transit system and moving us to free transit by 2040. A better, cheaper service encourages ridership. We know that, and it's essential for those who depend on it the most. And that's people who don't own cars and people who do shift work and depend on reliable service during the off-peak hours, which are among those that will be cut. So how can we address this? Well, you've heard this already today too. We must consider revenue tools that are within our reach. So the commercial parking levy seems to be gaining traction, and I fully support it. Apparently, the revenue from that could pay for the shortfalls in the TDC budget that we're experiencing. What about a climate action tax? Other cities, such as Halifax, have bravely done this, and if accompanied by adequate public education, Torontonians would feel good about it, as long as people who cannot afford it get a rebate, of course. How about reinstating the famous vehicle registration tax? It's worth noting that the ill-conceived rebuild of the Gardiner is the most expensive maintenance fee in the budget, costing $1 billion more than the cost of transportation services in Toronto, and much more than the TDC. I understand that Toronto is spending over $3 billion just to repair 1.7 kilometers. This is money that could be spent on transit, cycling, and pedestrian infrastructure. Remember, our goal is 75% of trips within 5 kilometers are to be cycled, walked, or on board the TDC by 2040. In addition to addressing the shortfalls in public transport, we must scale up building retrofits, especially those that increase the amount of affordable housing. As you will all know, buildings are 60% of Toronto's emissions. Building green, affordable housing can address both the housing and the climate crisis. The capital budget allocated for climate-related work this year is $2 billion or so. But to reach our 2040 goals, according to the city itself, there's actually a need for $8 billion every year. This is the kind of money that requires other levels of government to pitch in a whole lot more. So can the council work as one and with determination demand, for example, 1% of the provincial sales tax? Can council indicate strong support for the atmospheric fund's championing of heat pumps federally? Heat pumps provide much needed relief in extreme heat, and that's another equity issue that we all learned from the BC experience. Finally, there is no clear plan to fund Toronto's resilience strategy, it seems. Given projections for increased extreme weather events, the city needs to increase funding for programs that provide stable housing and shelter beds, that protect our ravines and park spaces for cooling and shade, and that are necessary for residents' well-being, and at the same time, protect biodiversity. The significant increase to the police budget would be better spent on social supports that would strengthen our communities, actually improve community safety and support climate resilience. Many others have deputed on very good ideas in this area, and I support them wholeheartedly. Finally, according to the city's own report on the net zero strategy, over 90% of people agree that climate change is a threat, but almost half of the residents say they don't know what they can do. So I'd like to change that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty much done.
Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you. There are no questions. Okay, before we go to the next applicant, I also want to acknowledge that we have Mayor Tory here in the council chambers. Mayor, welcome. Our next applicant is Dan Pennington. Dan,
Hello.
Dan, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity to speak today. At the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center, members of the Jewish community regularly come to us with problems and hateful incidents that they're facing. When appropriate, we encourage affected members of the community to contact law enforcement to ensure that their situation is treated with due seriousness. Unfortunately, the Toronto Police Service's Hate Crime Unit does not have the resources to promptly and effectively respond to all hate-motivated crimes and incidents. We hear time and time again from concerned members of the Jewish community that they feel that the hate factors of incidents that occurred to them are not being properly investigated, and that they are often given limited police resources as a reason why. Hatred is a complex phenomenon that requires extensive individual and institutional knowledge to address. Resources are needed to fund comprehensive education programs that empower officers themselves with the expertise needed to locate and identify the often shrouded and bizarre nature of hatred today, both online and off. Last year's hate crime data for Toronto is not available yet, but since the pandemic, we have seen a steady and deeply concerning rise in the number of reported hate crimes. In 2019, there were 415 crimes. In 2020, the first year of the pandemic, there were 549. 2021 saw 779. The hate crime rate has almost doubled, and it's likely that the data from 2022 will show this trend continuing. To make matters worse, recent polling by state and private organizations has shown that conspiratorial thinking is rampant among Canadians, a situation that reliably breeds hatreds and suspicions while providing new life to old but not yet dead bigotries. Vulnerable communities, including the Jewish community, are continually blamed for issues facing Canadians of all backgrounds. And unfortunately, some of our neighbors feel the need to act on those conspiracies. In short, our city is facing an epidemic of hatred, conspiratorial thinking, and blame seeking. Further, as troubling as the mentioned hate crime numbers are, we know they only capture a portion of the hate-motivated crimes and incidents that are actually occurring. Many Torontonians feel that the hate-motivated incidents that they've experienced will not be taken seriously, either out of priorities or indifference. Increased funding and visibility of the TPS Hate Crime Unit would go a long way to demonstrating the role that policing can play in building a cohesive, multicultural society that refuses to tolerate bigotry and hate. We hope that, considering our context of escalating violence against multiple vulnerable communities, a significant investment is made in expanding and deepening the Toronto Police Service's Hate Crime Unit. Thank you to the committee for your time and attention.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Dan, for being here with us this afternoon. Issues around hate is a major problem for many communities. You just identify the Jewish community and the challenges there. What you're saying here is that not enough investment is being made to the hate crime unit because when members of the Jewish community, as you've just expressed, reach out, it appears that there's not enough resources to respond to the complaints that they're getting. Is that what you just stated to us?
Yes, and it's regularly related to us, particularly when we advise people to reach out to police departments, that they then come back to us and say that they were told that there's simply not the resources, there aren't the officers to investigate what happened.
So would you then agree with respect to the approach as part of the funding in this budget to add more complemented police officers to address the points that you have just raised as part of your commentary?
Yes, and those officers need to be provided with comprehensive training and education so that they can identify when they're shown evidence of hatred. Because unfortunately, we've seen a number of officers who don't recognize symbols of hate beyond, say, the very famous, well-known ones, and that allows them to overlook important dynamics of individual incidents.
Right. would you then agree then that policing is such a necessity to assist in a variety of different social challenges that requires the assistance of policing? I'm take the mental health aspect out, but just crime in general, and in this particular case, hate crime, which is a serious issue that has broad implication, not only in terms of the well-being and just the safety of the individual, but also that of the community as a whole. The impact without policing doesn't bring about the necessary changes. Would you agree?
I believe that police do play a role in addressing this problem. Of course, they're not the only role. It's a multifaceted issue that's
Agreed.
has complex
Agreed.
origins. But yes, I do believe they play a role.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any further? No? Okay, thank you. Next deputant is Lou Israel. Lou? Lou, are you in the council chambers? Oh, okay. Next deputant is Pauline Larson. Pauline? Pauline, are you online?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, Pauline, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Pauline Larson. I am the Executive Director of the Downtown Yonge Business Improvement Area in the Yonge Dundas neighborhood of Toronto. And I'm here today specifically because we want to support the budget's proposed provisions around community safety and well-being. I want to preface this by saying that as a business improvement area representing over $7 billion worth of commercial real estate and 2,000 businesses, we have a very intentional focus that safety, community safety, and community well-being are two sides of the same coin. And thus, it's not a trade-off between those two things. It's a collaboration between those two things. To that end, and as context, since 2018, we have had a street-based crisis outreach team funded through the businesses that has provided crisis response in non-violent situations, particularly with street front businesses. And in our experience, our police partners, specifically from 51 and 52 Division, but more specifically from our Neighborhood Community Officer Program, have been one of the most important partners that we've had in those collaborative outreach programs. We also have a program called The Walkabout, which is led by a Cree elder who works with uniformed police officers doing street outreach in the Downtown East region in general. We very much agree that the police budget should be increased, but we also want to mention how important it is that initiatives like the Toronto Community Crisis Service continue to be funded and continue to be expanded. As with youth violence prevention programs, which are also in the budget, we believe that these things are all integral. Community safety and well-being takes two different approaches. One has to be around policing and safety directly and in an emergency situation, and some of it has to be through social services, mental health, and outreach programs. And we work to do both. We currently run a weekly partnered outreach program with 8 different agencies, partnering with our outreach team, with our Yonge Street neighborhood community officers, and we pair them up with outreach workers, housing workers, harm reduction workers, to work together for community well-being in this neighborhood. On the specific topic of police, though, I want to flag that we have increasingly been getting concerns from our stakeholders around property crimes and crimes against people. So for instance, in 2022, we've been doing regular safety surveys since 2018. We found that 50% of street front businesses in our neighborhood had experienced a property theft in the last 12 months. This is a reason why neighborhood community policing is critical. It's also a reason why the additional officers dedicated to the downtown core in the budget are so critical because they will be assigned to the priority response unit that responds to 911 calls, and we very much are in support of that. I also want to say that we, as Downtown Young, stand ready to work with our partners, whether it's police, whether it's the city, whether it's social agencies, all the community stakeholders that we work with, to find solutions to community safety and well-being. Proper funding across the board for a range of different interventions is necessary in this respect. And I'm specifically going to flag how vital and valuable neighborhood community policing programs have been for us in the downtown core. I also like to flag that we're currently working with the city, with the SafeTO team, looking to find ways to find that balance between the safety piece and the inclusion piece. And for that reason, we believe that this budget is very much trying to strike a balance between policing and emergency services, as well as outreach workers, youth violence prevention programs, and crisis response. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? No. So I have a question, Pauline. So as you know, part of this budget is adding, expanding the neighborhood officers program. So in my ward, I have a number of BIAs as well, and they're very connected with the neighborhood officers. They work within the businesses, and it's had a huge impact. Actually, we want to expand that as well. We want more in my ward. So has it been very successful in your BIA? And how are the businesses? Are the businesses reacting? Are they? I know the ones in my ward, they're actually giving out their cell numbers so they can contact them directly if they need a neighborhood officer. Is that working in yours as well, in your BIA?
So we have the only 2-division neighborhood community officer program in the city, I believe. It's a partnership between 51 and 52 divisions, and we've had it in place since before COVID began. So we've had it over a period of time. We work with our officers in a number of different ways. We provide resources and support around what they need to communicate with the community. So it could be information on how to report incidents, or it could be, to your point, Councillor Nunziata, we put together a flyer with all of their connected cell phone numbers so that people are always able to reach them. But we also do partnered outreach with them. We do partnered events with them. So in our neighborhood, Coffee with a Cop often includes Coffee with a Cop and our outreach team, because humanizing those different roles and responsibilities, making both the range of roles and responsibilities has been critically important. And they are very, very much key cornerstone partners that we have in this neighborhood for all the work we do around community safety and well-being.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next deputant is Briar DeLange. Briar, are you on the line?
I am. I'm just trying to get my video to start. Is that good?
Yes, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Briar DeLange. I'm the executive director at the Bloor Yorkville BIA, representing approximately 1,200 businesses in the Bloor Yorkville community. Our focus has been for many years beautification, promotion, and inviting people to the neighborhood. In recent years, safety has become a much more contentious issue for us, as we are experiencing more issues of physical violence, vandalism, property damage, and I'm sure you're well aware of issues that are happening in the Young Bloor subway station. So with our counterparts in the downtown BIAs, we're here today in support of this budget. And to Pauline's comments, their BIA is a bit of an anomaly in the amount that they do for public safety, which it's great, but it is really outside of what BIAs traditionally were supposed to do. But we are here in support of the groups that can be helping and being supported in assisting with crime and with safety issues that are happening in the city. And we applaud Mayor Tory and this committee. I'm, understanding from Councillor Thompson and Councillor Tang, you've read this line by line and you fully understand where this money is going, who it's being assigned to. And it isn't just an overall police budget. This is going to get us a better response time to 911, which those numbers are way off. We're not in the area we should be. If people are calling 911 and being told they can't get a response or they won't get an officer for an hour, that's not acceptable. We need the funding, as we're seeing, going to streets to homes, dealing with people on the street. The community response unit from the police are a priceless unit. And people need to understand, these aren't officers going out to arrest people. They are actually out there on the street getting to know people by name, by their problems, the respite centers they go to, and they connect them to the services and the help that they need, or at least try to put them in the right direction on that. It's not about arresting people. It's just about getting people the help that they need. And Toronto Police do not have the resources available to do that. We are 650 officers shy of what we had when our population was half the size that it is today. So we have officers retiring and not being replaced. And I think the average citizen doesn't realize that. And so when you make a call and they tell you they can't get to you, that's not acceptable, I think, on any level. As far as anything further on mental health, on housing, shelters, we appreciate all of the support and the budgeted numbers that are going to increase all of those budgets across the board. Streets to home staff to deal with our homeless population. And as far as our business community and the BIAs working together, please lean on us. We will help lobby if we need federal money, provincial money. We are here for you, and we want to work together on making Toronto a better, safer city for everybody. I think I put it in a nutshell, but that's my comments.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Crisanti.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your very positive comments on the benefits of the neighborhood community policing officers that do an excellent job. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, and since 2010, we've lost 650 officers. In this budget, we're addressing that issue. We're making every effort to ensure that we increase the complement and we direct a number of officers to our neighborhood community policing efforts. So I just wanted to ask you, so the response you got, how many people do you represent in your BIA?
There's 1,200 businesses, and we also work with approximately 4 different residential associations.
Okay. And so would you say that you have pretty much unanimous support from your BIA? Every single member is in agreement that more visible officers, community officers in your neighborhood would further help in all the issues that you just included in your comments?
I don't think it would be fair to say it's unanimous because everybody has their own opinions and they're like belly buttons, but it is the one thing. Yes, we don't hear a lot from our members, but when we do hear it from them, this is the one main concern that they are having is our Cafe TO program. They have people out dining and people walking past their tables, taking food off of their plates. I have buildings where they are having difficulty getting security officers because they've had situations where existing officers have been in a stairwell and have been attacked and they won't come back to the building or to any properties now in the neighborhood. So I'm hearing it on a more regular basis than I ever have, that they are concerned about community safety. And in the past, we had a community response unit, which are regular officers in the neighborhood on bicycles who get to know everybody. And, you know, regardless, if someone was out panhandling, that's what they were doing. And it wasn't an issue. But it's the level of violence that has come in the last 2 to 3 years, really, since probably the beginning of the pandemic, when there was fewer people coming to the offices and fewer people out on the street. We're definitely hearing that from our members.
Thank you very much. And that's the point I was wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question. As you know, and you've heard deputants suggesting that we charge a levy for downtown parking lots. What are your thoughts representing all this downtown?
And I would be, I'll be polite, but it would not be well received. I'll just put it that way, because we're in the fight of our life to try to get people back downtown, and right now they're not coming. Remote work. So if you apply a parking levy on top of a situation where we may be seeing vacancy rates upwards of 20% in our office towers, and then you're going to tell these landlords that they're going to have to pay for their empty parking spaces, which they're not getting any revenue from, I don't think it's fair. And I think any ruling with this will come with so many exceptions. All of a sudden, okay, is the strip plaza going to pay? Well, no, but just downtown is. Or is the church parking lot going to pay? Well, no, they're not for profit, so it's not going to apply to them. It's not going to apply to a hospital. It would just be a quagmire of problems, and it would unfairly tax the commercial properties that are now struggling to keep tenants.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next deputant is Janice Solomon. Janice, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Janice Solomon. I'm the Executive Director of the Toronto Downtown West BIA. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and my colleagues from Downtown BIAs the opportunity to speak today. In my neighborhood, we are a 24/7 neighborhood with over 2,500 businesses. Downtown West BIA is a significant contributor to Toronto's economic vitality. In the past 15 years, the residential population in Downtown West grew from 1,500 people to over 35,000 people. We have a daily working population of over 100,000 people, and 20 million visitors come annually to our neighborhood for dining, sports, attractions, performing arts, and nightlife. As growth continues, the population in our BIA is expected to double over the next 20 years. Maintaining a safe community to live, work, and visit must include the necessary police resources to keep pace with the complexities of our growing neighborhood. We support the proposed 2023 budget increase for community safety, which includes the addition of 25 police officers dedicated to the downtown. Additional police resources and improved police response time is critical, along with the commitment to continued funding and expansion of the Community Crisis Service, providing non-police responses to persons in crises. These are important factors for our community safety and well-being. We're pleased with the steps to address community safety and the police resource gaps through this 2023 budget, but we know it's only one step in the much needed resources. Our BIA is committed to advocate in support of the city's effort for safe and vibrant communities. And this includes requesting substantial increases in provincial and federal funding for social services programs, addictions and mental health treatment and prevention, coordinated with the increase of funding for supportive housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. Our last deputant is Zahavi Zinneberg. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you to the chair, members of the committee, Your Worship, Mayor Tory, for providing us the opportunity to speak to this year's budget proposal. My name is Zahavi Zinneberg. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, commonly known by its acronym CJA. CJA is the advocacy agent of Jewish Federations of Canada, including UJA Federation of Greater Toronto, the largest Jewish community organization in the country. CJA strives to reflect the broadest perspective within the Jewish community, representing the views of more than 150,000 Jewish Canadians. One of the community's deepest concerns right now is the rise of anti-Semitism across Canada and in the city of Toronto. This is a part of a worrying and corrosive trend of increasing hate in our society in general. The latest hate crime statistical report from the Toronto Police Service shows that the Jewish community was the target of 22% of reported hate crimes, even though we are less than 4% of the city's population. The latest data from Statistics Canada shows that hate crimes targeting Jews was up 47% in 2021, with an anti-Semitic hate crime reported more than once every day, more than 9 times every week on average. More go unreported. This impacts Jewish Torontonians at work, at school, at prayer, and in the street. Hate messages and hate symbols painted on synagogue walls. Jewish people harassed or assaulted while walking their dogs, leaving a store, or spending an afternoon at the park or riding on the TTC. The result? Nearly 50% of Jews in the GTA report downplaying their Jewish identity in public. Increasingly, Jewish communal gatherings happen behind fences and locked doors with a security guard or a paid duty police officer posted outside. According to Toronto Police, hate crimes have a disproportionately greater effect on their victims than other types of crimes. Hate-motivated crimes have longer-lasting serious side effects for society as a whole. A hate-motivated crime not only victimizes the individual, but also the entire group the person belongs to, resulting in increased isolation, stress, and vulnerability of that particular group. A timely and effective police response can have a positive and lasting influence on the relationship between police and the communities they serve. Positive relationships such as these have the ability to have the extensive benefits in other aspects of public safety. This requires appropriate resources. CJA was glad to see 2 consecutive years of additional investment in the Toronto Police Hate Crime Unit, which is crucial work on behalf of all Torontonians. We also supported the growth of the Neighborhood Community Officer Program last year, and are very glad to see that this year's budget proposal would further enhance this crucial program. Neighborhood community officers become a part of the communities they serve. They are on the ground, they are local. They know the people and the patterns of life within a community. They facilitate timely and effective police responses and build positive relationships. They are a crucial element, not just for policing in general, but in the fight against hate crime in particular. In getting to know the nuances of a community, they come to understand what hate directed toward that community looks like, providing both physical and moral support to those impacted by it directly and indirectly. We very much appreciate the leadership of Chief Raymer and his successor, Chief Demku, in advancing this approach, and we urge this committee to support this crucial program and ensure police have the resources needed to keep our community safe in the 2023 City of Toronto budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Any questions? No, well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
your deputation. Is there anybody that's here that wants to make a deputation that hasn't registered? No? Mayor Tory, would you like to say a few words? No? Okay, could I have a motion to receive the deputations? Moved by Councillor Grisanti, second by Councillor Thompson, all in favor, carried. We will now recess, no, actually, it's not recess, adjourn. Yeah, I was going to say recess, but it's adjourn. We will now adjourn, and our next session is at 6 o'clock. And members, a reminder to log into the meeting using the WebEx details for the 6 p.m. North York Civic Center meeting. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much to everyone that's made deputation that's here today.